Martin Varavalle, Ciamar Hashif. Jana Chasha, agus and G, Shinadella Brain, Mayan, please, agus thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's Rachel here again, and today I'm going to talk about please and thank you in Gaelic. And rather like the video I did on Happy Birthday, the answer's not all that simple. Basically, it's not simple, as I've already said, but also if you just say the words that you've likely already been taught for please and thank you, you may start an argument. Is it polite? Yes. Is it bealachas? Also yes, in the opinions of some people. So we'll start with the more contentious side of things that's most likely to make you be accused of speaking bealachas, or at the very least mark you out as a learner, or like a boomer age learner who learnt from a book, like Gaelic in 12 weeks in the 70s. And that will be saying marche de holle for please, or even worse, well, I don't know if it's worse, marche vertolle. This is worse than bealachas in the opinions of some people, in that it's actually like I don't know if there's a word for combining French and Gaelic. Gaelic? Never mind that. So basically what it is a direct calque from the French s'il vous plaît. So marche de holle if it pleases you. Marche vertolle if you're addressing a shiv, which is if it pleases you. And I've read Ackerbelt's article on this, where he points out that it is a Gaelic thing, and there are records of it being used, although primarily from Ireland, dating back a while, but he compares it to being in a costume drama and some servant girl is saying, if it pleases you, sir. So it's like, it sounds overly polite in a way, but this is one that many Gaelic teaching books will have included and taught as the phrase for please for quite a while. Marche vertolle and marche dohale. So a slightly less involved way of saying that you do hear perhaps more is le dehol or le vertol. Le dehol, le vertol. It still often strikes a lot of people as being very learnerish, but you do get a lot more native speakers will say that, and it's less controversial and it sounds less weird. So, le dehol, le vertol. And that's really the only phrases Gaelic has for please, but they're not used by hardly anyone, as I've said. So, you don't have to be rude. Some people can get offended by using these phrases because, I don't know, people are easily offended. But instead, there are a few easy things that you can do to sound more polite, which include your tone of voice. Obviously, this doesn't apply to all phrases. If you're being, like, obviously rude, it's going to be rude no matter how politely you say it. This is an odd thing for me as an Australian because we have this like reverse politeness thing going on, where often the words and phrases that are most polite to other English speakers will be the things that we associate most with like a very insolent tone of voice, and it comes across rude to us. But yes, polite tone of voice. It's a good start. You can also use shiv, because shiv is a way of being polite to someone who's older than you, being respectful. They might tell you to use oo. They might be quite happy to be addressed as shiv. It really depends. But using shiv, you're off to quite a good start. So an example of how you'd use this is if you're saying to someone, close the door. You say, dynjan daras. That's the oo form. But if you want to be just a little bit more polite, maybe imply a please there, you can say, dynjav and daras. So, dynjav and daras. The next thing you can do is be indirect. I don't know if being indirect is the right way to say this, but rather than saying open the door, ask it as a question. Will you open the door? Won't you open the door? So you can say nach dynnu andaras. Won't you close the door? Or an dynnu andaras? Will you close the door? Or you could use this in the shiv form as well. Nach dyn shiv andaras. An dyn shiv andaras. So just using nach or which is the negative question or the straight up question form, that can make it politer or imply a please, because you're not saying close the door, you're saying won't you close the door. And then the last thing you can do is say seal or fiach instead, which is more like, it implies like, I wonder if you'd close the door. So seal and dynnu andaras. Seal and dyn shiv andaras. Or seal and dynnu andaras. Or fiach and dynnu andaras. Fiach and dyn shiv andaras. And I have been looking at the Akabelt's article for this, and there's one thing that I've heard and might use that doesn't seem to be appearing in the article, which is that you could use the conditional. So, an dúnach shiv andaras, an dúnach tu andaras, which would be, would you close the door? Seal an dúnach tu andaras, which that to me is the politest form, but I guess others might disagree. But that's using the conditional, which, as you might know, the conditional is usually, if it's not a first person, you form it by putting an o on the end of the root form of the verb. So we've got dún, so an dúnach. And when it's the independent form, you delight the front of it. So rönach, rönach u andaras, you would close the door. That's a weird thing to say. But if I said that in the first person, it would be rönach andaras. I would close the door, because that's the one that conjugates. If you're not up to that, don't worry about it. I'm going off on a tangent. So we've covered ways to say please, which basically amount to, there are these two specific phrases that get translated as please, which is like le dahol, le vertol, and mashe dahole, mashe vertole, but they're sort of like beilachas. It marks you out as sort of directly translating from English, whereas the more Gaelic thing would be to use these other ways, like politeness forms, like shiv or the conditional, or phrasing it as a question rather than a demand, or saying seal or fiach, to like soften it, as it were. So that brings me to thank you, which is a little bit easier. There's basically 3 or 4 ways. There's 2 main ways. You will have been taught tapalet or tapalev, which is the very much more common one these days. But there is also gura mahagav or gura mahagat, which I'm sure there's someone already typing in the comments, but that's Irish. To which I direct you to these maps from Fachler Beck, where you'll see that Gura Mahagat and Gura Mahagav are actually the dominant forms in the more southerly Gaelic speaking areas in Scotland as well. So you do have them used in Scotland, as well as tapalet and tapalev. The interesting thing about tapalet and tapalev is because we've got a slight shade of meaning difference, where tapach means speedy, but we use it in Scottish Gaelic to mean like speedy in the brain. So it's like a well wish to people, but if you say tapalet to an Irish person, they might think you mean like hurry up or something like that. And the other main way you hear for thank you is mór an thank, which is fairly evenly distributed as a phrase, which is mór an thank, which is more like many thanks. And then you also just hear tank as well. I should have said with gura mahagat and gura mahagav, literally this means that it will be good to you. So it's the same sort of idea as tapalet and tapaleif. It's just like another way of putting it, and that uses the subjunctive, which is quite rare in Scottish Gaelic. You basically only get that in blessings and stock phrases. Stock blessings mostly are stock phrases too. So Gurm Hagat, and it is written Gun Ro Ma Agat, but you just say it quickly, Gramahagat. So yes, that's please and thank you, and I'll throw one more in for free, which is you're welcome, which is usually Shedoveha, or Shevurbeha, which literally means it's your life, which again from an English speaking perspective can sort of sound passive aggressive, but it's not. It's just like you're welcome. I didn't think this video out very much before I recorded it, so it is very ad hoc, and I may re-record this in a more professional sort of way at some point, but I hope you've found a use for my ramblings and learned something about being polite in Gaelic, because it's not as simple as just saying please and thank you as it is in English. Cheering and draste agus chimische van